So World War III clearly on the horizon. Hey everybody, what's going on? I'm Fabian for Liberty, FabianForLiberty.com. So where do I even begin? Yesterday I posted a video, really more of a rant, talking about how chemical weapons and their use on the American populace and one of the reasons why the banking cartels that in essence have taken over our government. I mean, they control the politicians, they bankroll the military-industrial complex, which is what allows us to go into all of these wars and all these different fronts. And you look not just at America, but you go back and you look at a chain of history, and you see all these other empires that fell into the same exact, just the same exact scenario that we see unfolding now. And I'm reminded by a video floating out there that I suggest everybody view, which is General Wesley Clark talking, and many of you may know this, talking about how he was at the Department of Defense or the White House, and a higher ranking military officer approached him and told him how he had seen plans for invasions into all these countries. We now see Obama rolling out peace operations, because that's probably what will happen. He'll probably be given the Peace Prize for starting World War III here. And how he saw, General Wesley Clark saw these plans going back into 2003, 2004. So this is what happens when banking cartels take over your country, take over your government, and take over your military. In this case, they have the largest, most powerful military in the world, so they use it as a tool to advance their agenda. Now, World War III on the horizon. Why do I say this? Because, a lot of people are saying, well, Russia has nuclear weapons in Syria right now. The Chinese and Russians are going to, fight the U.S. and the West over Syria. Here's what I'm going to go out and say right now. I don't think China is going to do anything. If we do indeed, or I shouldn't say we, if our criminal government does indeed attack Syria with precision strikes using Tomahawk weapons, and goes along with the other bankrupted countries of the West, France and Germany, France and New England, which is or United Kingdom, which is amazing that to see England, France, even the U.S., which are literally technically bankrupt. I mean, the only reason we could even do this, or they can do this, is because they print money to fund these wars and to fund these operations. It's almost comical to see this going on. It's like the family that's maxed out on credit cards and they can't control their spending, so now they're like, in the basement counterfeiting money to continue to fuel the reckless spending. That's what's happening right now, right? I don't think China is going to really do anything. I think China's more long-term plan is to watch the U.S. in essence bankrupt themselves, watch them destroy their own dollar, and hold the $1 trillion plus of dollars over their head like we did to England at the turn of the century, and basically were able to then replace it with the world reserve currency. That's what's likely to happen. Russia is a little bit different. Russia does have strategic relationships with Syria. I've mentioned the port. Go back and see my other videos. When the Syrian conflict broke out, I did an in-depth report about how it was for the Russians, it was all about that Syrian port and the value that had. But these are the types of events, I've heard a lot of different top analysts on this subject matter. This is a lot of different events. You look at the Cuban Missile Crisis, where you had just a couple of things that could have gone differently, that could have caused a nuclear war. This is that type of event. Now, ultimately, I believe that the West and the banker-run, Al-Qaeda that is put in there by the West will ultimately take over Syria like they tried to do in Egypt. I think that the West will attack, will use Tomahawk cruise missiles. It will spread into a more regional war. Israel will be dragged into it, but I think ultimately they will continue rolling out their agenda with the big target being Iran. A couple different changes here, though, is that Iran knows that if they're able to pull off, if they pulled off in Libya, or for that matter Egypt, they know they're next on the chopping block. Or, if you've seen the invasion in Iraq, Afghanistan, and how the West has come in and ousted leaders or dictators or whatever you want to call them, ousted them and put in these transition governments that are in essence puppet governments of the U.S. and of the New World Order. Well, that's likely what's going to happen from this. Now, could Russia throw down the gauntlet and say, look, an attack on Syria is an attack on Russia? I don't believe that would happen, but anything is possible. There is no question that Vladimir Putin has been instigating and confronting Obama and the New World Order and the banking cartels and letting them know that he's not going to play along with it. And, you know, everything from allowing Edward Snowden to have asylum in Russia to showing off the gold reserves that he's been purchasing, showing the world that, you know, they have gold reserves that after the dollar reset, these will be very valuable, I think are all plays. Not to mention the fact that major arms sales from Russia to the U.S. ammunition sales were halted halfway through the sale and the ships were turned around during all of this leading up. A lot of the headlines point to, and a lot of the research I've done, point to an attack imminent on Syria, usually like they did the shock and awe campaign, if you remember, on Iraq, which is basically bombarding from the Navy, you know, from basically the Navy and some warships. Now, one last point is Syria, unlike Iraq, Afghanistan, and even Libya, has a more sophisticated weaponry that's been purchased by the Russians. They also have an air force, not on par with the U.S., but definitely an air force that is capable, and a lot of armament that's come from the Russians. So the point being is, will this result in World War III? I'd like to see what you have to say about this. My opinion, once again, is that ultimately the New World Order will dominate in Syria like they have the other places. I don't like saying that. I don't like any of this. And for those of you watching around the world, I can tell you that a majority of Americans are against military intervention in Syria. The last poll that I saw was 9%. If chemical weapons are proven, which is all planted and fraud, it goes up to 25%. So the majority of Americans are against this military operation. And I can tell you that these military operations are not taking place in the name of the American people. They're taking place in the name of the New World Order. I'm Fabian for Liberty. Check me out on Facebook. Thanks for watching. I'm out.